just see if we can zoom in a little bit. Whoop, there we go. And if we look down here to the left, and we can see this necklace made all of kangaroo teeth. And this necklace was made by an artist called Marie Clark. And Marie Clark is a contemporary artist based in Melbourne. And she's Bunjilaka and Wamba Wamba, Yorta Yorta and Muddy Muddy artists. They're her language groups. And we actually have a few historical kangaroo tooth necklaces in the Museum Victoria's collection. And so Marie has done many, many years of research and work. And along with her and a man called Uncle Len Tregonning, they made this necklace. And this was one of the first kangaroo tooth necklaces made since colonisation. And it's a very special object for the museum to have, because it not only references history and the past and connects to those objects that are in the collection, but it also means that it's this continuation of culture in a contemporary way. So it's very exciting to have that one in the collection. So let's zoom out a little, and perhaps we can move around. So let's go back this way. Whoops, or maybe we'll go forward. So on the wall here, you can see this map, and some of you may have seen this before. And this is actually the Aboriginal languages map of Australia. And as I was saying, I'm Yorta Yorta. We're on the lands of the Bunjilaka and the Woiwurrung in Melbourne. But across Australia, pre-contact, there are over 250 different languages, different nations just in Australia. So you can get a sense of how diverse we are. And from going from, you know, Melbourne could be going from England to Japan in the difference, or Melbourne to Arnhem Land would be like going from England to Japan in the difference of language and the difference of some cultural practices. So our people across Australia are very diverse, and you can see this just in the objects that are in this space alone. Ooh. Sorry, we've done a little 360 out of the gallery. Let's take us back in. So let's try and get back. So we've looked at marking identity, and we've looked at many celebrating cultures. Here in the middle, we can see the Toy Stories case. And this case right in front of us holds several toys that Aboriginal people made and children would have. So traditionally, we would have toys as well. And you can see in the case, there is a little canoe on the far left-hand side. There are boomerangs flying through the air, and they're little mini boomerangs for children. And we also have a ball in there made of possum skin, and that ball is called a marngrook. And that was used in a game like football today. And so Aboriginal people would play football as well as a game. So many nations, as you can see, has lots and lots of objects. And this case here, move forward just a little bit, whoop, and around. This case, you can see, we'll try and zoom in a little bit, beautiful baskets. And this case we called keeping places, because this is where we keep, these objects is where we keep our special things. Things like food, so we could collect food like eggs and berries and different plants. And this basket on the sort of second step on the bottom here, on the sort of left-hand side, is a beautiful big basket that was used to collect mallee fowl eggs. So at a certain time of the year, people up along the northeast of Victoria and in other places would collect the mallee fowl egg, and you would use this basket to collect these eggs. Also above that is a dish that you could use to carry water. So, you know, all of these vessels had different uses for different reasons. There was even some beautiful dishes called coolamans that you could use to carry babies in. So they were like little holders for your baby. So the keeping places case has lots of different baskets from all across Australia. And again, like the shields, we had different designs and different grasses and different weaves that we would use to make our objects. So now we're going to go out and back to the front of Bunjilaka, and we're just going to move up and have a look at Wrapped in Country. And so here we are in front of the possum skin cloak. And for those of you that may not be familiar with possum skin cloaks, they are things that Aboriginal people had from when they were small. And this is Aboriginal people in Victoria and New South Wales, and even up to Queensland had them. And we would have a possum skin cloak from when we were babies. So it might only be 5, 6 pelts big. And then as you grew, you would add possum skins to that cloak to make it a big blanket, to make it a big cloak. And we would wear them to keep warm. And we could even wear them in summer to keep cool with the skin, with the fur on the outside. But what we also did was we scratched designs into the cloaks. And these designs were, again, like the shields, they were markers of our identity. So they weren't just pretty patterns, they were actually maps of country, or they might have been the totem animal of your clan. They were significant designs to the owner, and they told a story of that person's life or that clan group. And so we're very lucky at the museum because we have 2 historical cloaks in the collection. And one of them is from my country, the Yulendj people, and the other cloak is from the Western District, from the Gunitjmara people. And these cloaks are from 1853 and 1872. And the cloak that you can see in front of you is the Yulendj cloak from 1853. And we might try and zoom in a little bit. I'm not sure we can get much closer. So unfortunately, you can't really see the detail on this cloak, but the detail is actually a design of the river systems. So the rivers up on my country, Yulendj country, there's the Murray River, or as we know it as the Dungala River. There's also the Kayila River, which is actually known as the Goulburn River. And there's also the Campaspe and lots of different waterways that form up in that region. And so the elders think that the design on this cloak is actually a design of the river systems. And so today there are still people, and we'll zoom out now, there are still people, Aboriginal community, making these possum skin cloaks. So it's still a practice that's very much alive today and very special to our community. Ooh, so now we're going to move up into a section called 2000 Generations. And we'll walk through here. Let's stop at this cross here. Now, 2000 Generations takes us on a journey across Victoria pre-contact. So before the British and the other people came here on their boats, this is before then. And if we look through this door here, this is an installation, and hopefully when we reopen, everyone can come in and see this because it's a very special projection and story of Bunjil, the eagle. And Bunjil is the creator spirit for the people of the Kulin Nation, of Melbourne. And he takes form as an eagle. And then it tells the story of Bunjil and also Wah, who is the crow, who's the protector of Melbourne. And so when we pass through this space, we first go into Bunjil's nest and we hear the story of the creation of Melbourne. And then we walk out to where we're standing right now and we can discover more about Victoria. Here, you can see that big giant wombat in front of us. And that is a diprotodon. So that is the megafauna, the giant, not quite dinosaurs, but a little bit like them, but the giant fauna, megafauna of Australia. And this one became extinct about 45,000 years ago, but Aboriginal people were living with the megafauna. So here we talk about deep time and how long we've all been, or Aboriginal people have been in this country for tens of thousands of years. So a very long time. And this space is also about how we farmed the country for that long time. So we had special boundaries and we had special lands, and this is where we stayed. And sometimes we would travel, and sometimes we would ask permission from our neighbours to travel through their country. But we had a place on our country, and we travelled with the seasons as well. So we didn't necessarily always just stay in the one spot. We would travel to where the food was good, and lots of different reasons in our own area. So this space here is talking about how we were farmers and how we knew the seasons and that we farmed the land. And though we didn't just sort of walk around, we really knew what we were doing with country. And right in front of us, you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the sort of beginning of an eel trap. And the Bunjilaka people and the people of the Western District of Victoria, they were expert eel farmers. And there's a very special place called Lake Condah up in the western part of Victoria where a lot of the eel farming took place. And here we have a big woven eel trap. So the way that the eels would be trapped is that they would swim in the entrance, and the eel traps would be positioned in a little dam that would have been built by all the volcanic rock that was available up on that area. And they would swim in, and then they couldn't swim back out. And so then the First Peoples would be able to catch the eel and harvest them, and then they would smoke them in a hollowed out tree and be able to eat them and also trade them around to different people. Here on the left where this yellow is, on the right, sorry, where the yellow is talking about the murnong. And murnong is a plant that Aboriginal people used to eat and still do. There's still a murnong harvest that happens on the Merry Creek in Melbourne by the Wurundjeri people every year. And the murnong is a plant that has a really pretty yellow flower, and the tuber, the bottom of the plant, is what you can eat. And traditionally the women would use their digging sticks. So you can see here on the right-hand side, this stick that's in the case, that's a digging stick. And women would use digging sticks to work the land so they could dig up the food. They could also plough and make sure the soil was soft, ready for the regeneration of the plant for the next season. And so these digging sticks, and we'll try and move forward a little bit. There we go. Were used in that harvest of the murnong. And you can see here, we've got some more digging sticks. We have a murnong plant. And this illustration at the back was by a man called J.H. Wedge, who was a very early settler in the state. And he drew these women way back in the 1800s, harvesting, using their digging sticks to dig out this murnong. And then the murnong could be collected in beautiful baskets like we see here, and then also cooked over fire. And at the very end here on the far left is a fire stick. So this is how we could make fire and start bigger fires to cook food on. If we turn around to this cabinet here, this is where we talk about trade. And all the different things in this cabinet were traded. So I spoke earlier about how the eels were cooked and smoked and then traded. Well, things like river reeds, so this big long reed here, were traded also to make spears. And then we have medicine in this cabinet as well. So old man weed, which is a special medicine that can be found in lots of places still. And then this mat, which is a little bit tricky to see, and I'm sorry I can't take you around the other side, but this mat here in the case on the sort of on the left to that spear is something that you could put your baby in. So you have the big round mat, and then you have a pocket that's been woven onto that. And so women could put their babies in that and strap it onto their back and continue with their work, or maybe they could put them on the ground and their babies could sleep safely and comfortably on the mat. So we're going to continue through, and hopefully just by getting a little bit of an insight through this tour, when you come back into Bunjilaka and to see First Peoples, you might be able to pick some of the things out that I've been talking about and find out a little bit more detail too in the exhibition, because we have lots of elders and community members talking about our histories in this exhibition. So it's really important information coming straight from community, and they were very generous in sharing knowledge and time when we developed this exhibition. Whoops, sorry. Ooh. Now we're down the end here now. We've just gone past, we'll turn around. We've just gone past a very beautiful installation by Marie Clark, who was the artist that I spoke about earlier. And this exhibition, or this display as we walk through this corridor, is signifying the change. So it's signifying colonisation and, you know, new people coming to our shores. And unfortunately, with that new, with the colonisation and the new people coming to our shores and Aboriginal land, they also brought some disease. And smallpox was a very bad disease that affected Aboriginal people on the frontier. And this moment in the exhibition references that history, but also it's a memorial to all of those people, all of our ancestors that passed away on the frontier because of that terrible disease. And we get greeted with this image as we walk down that corridor, reflecting on, you know, this change, on the new people coming into Australia via their boats and the two worlds that our ancestors now had to live in. And the first sort of industry that we saw, especially in Melbourne and in Port Phillip Bay, was the sealing and the whaling industry. So here we talk a little bit about how that affected the Aboriginal people and particularly the Bunjilaka people of Port Phillip Bay and that area. And we have some strong stories of Bunjilaka men and women that were sort of on the coast at that time and seeing the change to their country. And this is a big sealers pot here on the left-hand side that the sealers were used. And then you can kind of see through the reflection there a club, a traditional club that First Peoples from that area would use with the seals also. So now we're coming into a different point in time, a different point in history. And it's called Our Shared History because Aboriginal history is Australian history, and it's something that we should all be very proud of and know about. And so our elders, when we were developing this exhibition, really wanted this space to be called Our Shared History, so we can all understand and share and also move forward together, you know, in Australia and understanding First Peoples culture and sovereignty. So this first section here is called Treaty and Tanderum. And you can see some amazing spears that are on the right-hand side here. And this talks about, I guess, the different concepts of land and ownership. So we had people like Batman coming in and Faulkner and all of these people in Melbourne, English and settlers that were discovering a new land to them and were settling Melbourne. And you can see this illustration straight ahead of us is actually Collins Street. So where that tree is sort of where Parliament is sitting right now. So you can imagine how much has changed and what the Aboriginal people were witnessing at that time. So there's a few other, there's a module in behind here called Call to Fight. And that module looks at war and the early frontier, and also Aboriginal people that have gone to war for Australia as well. So there's many stories that you can experience when you come into First Peoples in that module. So let's move forward to here. And so these two spaces, the one on the right-hand side is called Burdens to Bear, and that talks about all the different policies and different legislations and acts that have affected Aboriginal people right through to today. And just acknowledging that today is also Sorry Day. So this module actually speaks to that history, and we have the apology from Kevin Rudd, who was the Prime Minister at the time, and we have lots of stories from our elders that have experienced hardship through these policies. So that's a very reflective space. You can come in and you can learn more about that history. So this space here, standing strong, and you can see just in the corner, and I'm sorry, oh, I might be able to take you a little further, or maybe not. You can see just in the corner here a football jumper, and this is the football jumper that Nicky Winmar wore in that very famous photo, which you can see where he points at his skin and he says, "I'm proud, I'm black and I'm proud." And this whole space is around I guess the civil rights and the movements and the political movements by Aboriginal people to, you know, be counted in the 1967 referendum, to the different walk-offs missions, to a variety of different political movements that have happened in Victoria and across Australia that have influenced our lives today. So we might continue on. I'm conscious that I've been going for a little while now. I hope you're all still enjoying it. It's quite an odd experience to be sitting in the museum. Also, I actually am sitting in our collection storeroom, which you might see behind me, amongst the objects, but also giving you this virtual tour, which is pretty amazing. So here we have Working Hard. And Working Hard is a module that talks about how Aboriginal people have contributed to Australia and to the different economies and spaces of Australia. And on the right-hand side, you can see an image there of Lionel Rose, who was a very famous athlete, Aboriginal athlete and sportsman, and a world famous boxer. And you can see some of his gloves here if you look a bit closer. So the stories that feature in Working Hard range from the fruit picking and the vegetable picking and the labour of the early, 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. It still goes on. A lot of my family still in Shepparton are fruit pickers or have been fruit pickers. But we also have the story of the 1868 Aboriginal cricket team that toured England, and they were the first cricket team from Australia to tour England. And they also took with them a lot of cultural materials like spears and shields and clubs. And along with being amazing sportsmen and cricket players, they would also share their culture with the people over in England. So we tell that story there through some of the descendants. So there's lots of different stories of community from the past, but also from the present, that talk to us about how our culture is strong and that it's surviving and that it will continue right into the future. So if we look to our left here, we have a jukebox. And this jukebox is, unfortunately, I can't play the music, but we have some iconic songs on this jukebox that community love. And we have songs from Uncle Jimmy Little, who was a Yorta Yorta songman. We have songs from, who else do we have? We have Joey Gaia, Coloured Stone. So a lot of these songs are really iconic for community, and they're either songs that hold political, I guess, reference or cultural reference, but it's a lot of fun to play if you can come in and press the buttons and listen to these songs by our amazing musicians. You can see behind the jukebox a possum skin cloak, but it's wrapped. It's almost like someone's wearing it. And this cloak sits next to that Yorta Yorta cloak and now the Gunitjamara cloak that's on display in that wrapped in country section that we first stopped at. And this is a contemporary cloak. And as I was saying before, the practice of possum skin cloak making has been happening for many thousands of years now, and it continues through our communities. And so we're very proud at Museums Victoria to be able to support and have contemporary cloaks on display as well to teach people about this very important history to us. So this section here is actually called Coming Together, and it's about community coming together through music and cultural practice like making cloaks, but also teaching and sport. and really celebrating the achievements of our community and that continue today. So I'm going to just turn this way now before we exit the gallery, and you can see here this beautiful canoe. And this canoe, I bet you can't guess how old it is, but it's actually from 2010. And so this is a beautiful example of that cultural continuity and you know, teaching and passing down knowledge as well, because the people that made this were the Mullet family. And so Uncle Albert Mullet, he was a Gunai man and a great cultural knowledge person. And he made this canoe with his grandsons, and his grandsons learnt from him on how to make a canoe like the old people had. And so we were very fortunate to be able to acquire that canoe for First Peoples. And it was actually one of our first new acquisitions for the exhibition, for the redevelopment of First Peoples Gallery, was this beautiful canoe from that family. So we were very privileged to be able to have that, to tell that story of cultural continuity ongoing into the gallery and for everyone to come and see. So now I'm going to take us back out. And so you can see how we've done a bit of a loop right through from many nations to 2,000 generations. And then also over here, we have generations. And this is looking at the diversity of who we are across Aboriginal Victoria. So through all of these photos, and there's about 200 different photos that wrap all around this sort of main section here, this cinema section. And this looks at Aboriginal people from around 1847 right through to 2013. And we not only see the beautiful photos, but we also get a sense of who was in that photo. Some of their descendants are talking, some of the people that are even in that photo are talking. And so you can come and look on these iPads and get a really beautiful insight into all of these communities' lives and understand a little bit more about the photo that you're looking at. And also in the cinema experience here in Generations, you can also hear from our community, and they talk about things like culture and family and connection and celebration and all of the amazing aspects of Aboriginal community in Victoria today. So there's lots of content for you to experience when you come into Generations, but also the entire exhibition. I mean, this was just a quick whip around in half an hour or 40 minutes. And I could probably spend at least a couple of days in here talking to you about all of these extraordinary objects and histories and stories that we are so lucky to have from our community. So I hope that you have enjoyed this tour, and it gives you a little bit of an insight into First Peoples from my perspective of someone that works in this exhibition and works with these collections every day. And I hope that you can come back in soon and see it for yourself in real life. So I'm just going to hand it back to Richard now and see if there's any questions I can answer.
Thank you, Kimberley. That was great. So I'll just go through, we have had a few questions that have come through, and I'll just kind of go through and we'll ask, get through as many of them as we can. I think we've got about sort of 5 or so minutes left to go. The first one is not really a question, it just comes from Rochelle. She just wants to let you know that she sings Bunjilaka at Kinder.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Another question from Forrest. They want to know, are cloaks passed down to children, grandchildren, etc. when people pass on?
Well, so traditionally, our ancestors would have been buried in their cloaks. So we would have our cloak our entire life, and then when we passed away, we would be wrapped with them, and then they would go back to the earth with us. But today, because there are so many people making possum skin cloaks as a contemporary practice, as something to, I guess, talk about culture and for our families, some of them are now passed down generation to generation.
Okay. And Ekaterina wants to know, Kimberley, do you have a possum skin cloak?
I don't actually, but I am planning on making one, and my sister's having a baby soon, so I'm going to make my little niece or nephew a possum skin cloak as a present.
Okay, cool. So another question from Yumi. They want to know why was, and I'm not sure if there is an answer for this, but they want to know why was an eagle chosen as the for Bunjil, the creator spirit?
That's a good question. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. All I know is that he is the creator for the people of the Kulin Nation, and it's very well, it's from the beginning really, for the people of the Kulin Nation. And there's actually even rock art of Bunjil up in Garryword in Victoria, but it's just something that is the culture of the people that come from here.
This follow-on question from Ekaterina is what is it possible to briefly talk about the Bunjil, because her child absolutely adores the Bunjil's nest room.
Oh yeah, well, to talk about Bunjil's nest.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and Bunjil. Yeah, so Bunjil is the creator. So he takes the shape of eagle, and then we have Wa, who is the crow, and he is the protector of the people. So I won't tell you the story because it's not my story to tell, because I'm just a visitor on this country as well. But if you come into Bunjilaka, you can hear it from the elders themselves. And I'm sure if you looked up on the internet as well, on the Bunwurrung or the Wurundjeri websites, you can find out more about how they describe their stories around Bunjil and Wa.
Okay, cool. Just going through a few more questions. Ekaterina again wants to know what the seal pot was for.
That was actually for, it's a little bit unpleasant, but it was for cooking the seals essentially, because the sealing and the whaling industry, so all these people were coming out and they were farming, I guess, the animals in a sense and making, using their fat and their oil. So that was a very early practice.
Vicky wants to know, were the shields used for food collection, or were they also used for fighting intruders if they needed for defense?
I'm not sure if they were used for food collection, because we would have baskets and coolamans and different kind of dishes that would serve that purpose. So I think they were mostly used in combat and also in ceremony.
Okay. Jake wants to know is they vocally support sort of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and want to know if there's any ways you can suggest that they could sort of pursue this. Do you have any guidance about sort of ways they could possibly do better? Is to describe it, to use his words.
I think that, I think education is really important, and learning and being open to learning. So I think coming into Bunjilaka is a good opportunity to learn more. And I think educate yourself from our community's perspective, because it's all of our elders, like I said earlier, our elders and our community that have shared their knowledge in the exhibition. So you'll be hearing from them. There's also a place called the Koori Heritage Trust in the city, at Federation Square, which is also in a really important place where you can go and learn about Aboriginal Victoria. And so, yeah, I suppose just looking out for resources like that. And also online, Culture Victoria is a really good website that you can learn lots more about Aboriginal Victoria.
Okay, great. Matt would like to know if you speak your and other languages, and do you? So how many languages do you speak? I suppose is the indirect question.
I just speak English, unfortunately. So I have a few words that I know in my Yorta Yorta language, but unfortunately, because of colonisation, the southeast was hit quite heavily, and our languages and different cultural practices were impacted on that. And so it meant that my grandmothers that were on Cumragunja Mission didn't have the opportunity to continue with their language. So I think now it's the opportunity for my generation to reclaim that and revive that. And there's actually a big Yorta Yorta revival project been happening for many years, and there are people that speak Yorta Yorta back home. So that's something that I do want to do myself eventually.
Yingma has a it's more of a technical, I suppose, conservation question, but they wondering why the pelts on the wood haven't rotted yet. Do you know?
Why the pelts on the
pelts on the wooden exhibits in the exhibition haven't rotted?
Because they've been in the museum for a really long time. So Museums Victoria has been here since 1854. And we've been collecting Aboriginal material probably not long after that. So they've been taken really good care of. And when they come to the museum, they're treated for pests. So we get rid of any little bugs that might eat away at the wood. And then they're stored in special boxes and in special storage rooms, like the kind of place I'm in now, that have humidity controlled spaces. So we have a range of experts, collection managers and conservation people that work with our objects to ensure that they will be here forever, for the communities that they come from and for everyone to learn from and connect to.
Okay. I just want, again, I'm not entirely not sure you have an answer to this particular question, but Colette wants to know if you have any details about the Aboriginal reburial site in the domain, or if there's somewhere she can look into that.
I don't off the top of my head right now, but it's certainly something you could probably Google about. There would be information, because that was quite a important moment for that reburial. So I'm sorry I can't give you anything right now, but if you contact our Curious website with that question, we can follow that up for you.
Okay. And the last two are not really questions. They seem to have caused quite a lot of conversation. So Esha, who is 8, wants to say that your earrings are great, Kimberley. And,
thank you.
And Pip seems to think that they are from Clothing the Gap or the Larrikori Circle. Do you remember where you...
No, they're not actually. They look a little bit like the Koori Circle, and the Koori Circle make amazing earrings, and they're Aboriginal women from Victoria. But these ones are from an Aboriginal woman from Queensland called Millie. So she's on Instagram.
Okay. Jay Bowen wants to know if there's anywhere in Melbourne they can go to try First Nations foods.
Yeah, there is. So you can actually go to Charcoal Lane, which is on Gertrude Street. And that's a restaurant that has lots of beautiful Native Australian food. And it also supports Aboriginal communities as well. So that's a really good restaurant that you can go to.
Okay, and one last question is, this is from Forrest again. After going to the exhibition, I read one of the books referenced in Generations, Black Swan, A Koori Woman's Life, and absolutely loved it. Is there anywhere online where we can look at the other materials referenced in the exhibition? Do you know?
Anywhere?
Yeah, is there anywhere that you can maybe do a bit more research into some of the other artifacts and things that are in the exhibition or not?
Yeah. So we can you can go to collections online at Museums Victoria website, and there we have a lot of the collections that are in that Many Nations section that I showed you earlier are on collections online, so you can actually see close-up images of them. You can learn more about them. So that's probably a really good first point if you want to learn more about the objects that are in the exhibition. And I will mention that Auntie Eileen Harrison is the author of that book, of Black Swan. And we have an exhibition that's on at the moment that will be extended. So when we do reopen, you can come in and see it, which is of Auntie Eileen Harrison and also Auntie Rochelle Patton, and it's called Two Strong Sisters. And it's their works together in First Peoples temporary space. So yeah, I'd really encourage people to come in and see that beautiful show by the aunties as well.
Okay. Well, I think that's just about all the time, all we have time for. I just want to kind of quickly go. There's been a few messages of thanks for you Kimberley, Zoe, Georgie, Charlie, and Escher again. Just want to say thank you so much for the amazing tour. And I would personally sort of thank you as well.
You're welcome. Thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, I hope to see you in the museum one day soon.
Yes, we do. We're hanging on with bated breath to welcome everybody back into the museum.
Yeah.
We miss you.
And
I just want to kind of close off and just say thank you so much for attending this this tour, and thank you all for your continued support for the museum. We cannot continue to do the work that we do without the support of our members and other sort of supporters as well. So thank you so much. Great. So the next tour we're going to be having will be based out of ScienceWorks. There'll be information coming about that soon in the email newsletters and things that come out to you. So keep an eye out for those ones, and we'll be doing more of these in the future.